Hey everybody, how are you doing? It's Tony. Back with another distance learning video. We're going to continue our current theme on resume building with a presentation on that very concept. So far we've gone over the do's and don'ts of resumes, the things to include, the things to keep off of a resume. But now we're going to get into how to word your resume a little bit more deliberately to get the best results. So, first thing is this idea of experience versus skills. Usually, I like to have a discussion. So, between experience and skills, which do you think is more valuable and or important to list on a resume? Now, they're both important. That's the key thing. Neither is a bad thing. Experience helps us develop skills, and that's an important thing to remember. I think a lot of people get really caught up on this idea of experience, especially when you're young and you might not have ever had a real job before. We tend to look at that, or and think it's a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of employers, when they're hiring teenagers, understand that not everybody's going to have the same experience, but that doesn't mean that somebody with less experience is going to be less hireable. And that's important to think about, and that's what I want us to kind of consider. So skills are really the key thing for a resume. The more skills you have, the better chance you have of being hired. If you read the article from the last assignment about the idea of the value line, that was kind of at the heart of it, which is the more diverse your skill set, the more hireable you become in the long run. So experience is good, skills are good, but in the grand scheme, skills are always going to outweigh experience if you know how to describe them, and that's the key thing. So experience, as I was saying, experience is what you have done. So your experience will be the various places you've worked, and it's the big picture and your overall exposure to different roles and responsibilities. What you do with your experience will be what differentiates you from another potential candidate with similar experience. So as an example, babysitting, office teacher's aide, and cashier are all experiences. You have the experience of being a babysitter, the experience of being an office aide or a teacher's aide, and the experience of being a cashier. So each of those has their own specific skill sets necessary to be successful in them, but those are kind of the headers. When you want to put something down on a resume, they tend to look at the title of your experience and kind of go from there. So those are the big picture things. Now, skills are what you can accomplish, what you're able to do. So skills are the tangible, measurable, applicable abilities that you have developed and utilized within your experiences. So as examples, for babysitting, as the experience, the skill is take care of children. For an office or teacher's aide, one of the skills is to organize files. And as a cashier, one of the skills is handling cash. So now you're kind of seeing how it flows from the experience to the skills. Some experiences lend themselves, or I should say some skills lend themselves to certain experiences. Obviously, if you are a teacher's aide or an office aide, you're probably not going to have cash handling as an experience, or as a skill, I should say, or at least you haven't been asked to do that. At least I wouldn't think so. But that's the same thing, is some experiences have skills that are kind of inherent. If you're a babysitter, certain skills are going to be expected. So keep in mind that the experiences kind of give the hiring managers an idea of what skills you've developed. So as an example, let's take a look at this to understand the idea of why experience and skills are two different things. So candidate one has a bachelor's degree and has worked successfully in their field for 6 years at the same position with the same roles and responsibilities each year. That's not too bad. But candidate two has a bachelor's degree and has worked in their field for only 3 years. However, they have worked in several positions and have been exposed to a wider array of tasks and roles than candidate one, developing a more diverse skill set in a shorter time. So who would you hire? The candidate with more experience, number one, or the candidate with more skills, number two, and why? There's merits to hiring both. Obviously, 6 years, candidate one, that shows longevity. So if you've worked at the same place for a long time, that often reflects well because it shows that you are committed and that you are able to continue with the same level of success. the same roles and responsibilities each year. For instance, as a teacher, I can really only be a teacher. I can't be a senior teacher or a junior teacher or an assistant teacher in high school. I can just be a teacher. So I've been in my position for 5 years. I've had the same role and same responsibilities. However, what I can differentiate myself with is taking on other clubs and sponsoring those. That'll help kind of round out myself as a distinguished teacher in that regard. Now, candidate two, okay, they've only had their job in the field for 3 years, but they've been willing to take on several positions and wider array of tasks and roles. That can also be a very hireable trait because it shows that they're willing to take on different tasks. They're not afraid of challenges. Maybe they're a little bit more proactive as an employee. Neither are bad. Hiring either would be a good idea, but you definitely want to weigh their backgrounds. If number one has been in their field for 6 years, but hasn't really shown anything distinguishing about themselves, that could potentially be detrimental to their goal. Now, candidate two, jumping around from position to position could be good. It could be bad. It depends on in what way they've done it. If they kept climbing the ladder, awesome. But if they've kind of been demoted or taken lower positions, that might be seen as a negative. So you have to be careful. Not everything is weighed equally. The devil's always in the details. So, as it says right here, experience does not equal skill. Just because you've done something for a long time does not mean you are good at it. So you should always be looking for opportunities to improve yourself and develop more skills. No matter how long you've been doing something, you can always get better at it. So we're going to look at building skills. This is where the language arts aspect really comes into play. The ability to describe the skills, not just saying what you do, but all the different elements that go into that skill. So when you list skills, you want to consider 5 things. Number 1 is the abilities, what you can physically do, what you're able to do. And that's kind of the heart and soul of the skill is what you can do. But you also want to think about traits, so the behaviors and attitudes necessary or beneficial to the task. For instance, if you are a cashier, you might want to have as a trait maybe friendliness because you're going to be dealing with people over and over again. So you want to have people skills. You want to have a personable personality, and that's a trait that would be something that distinguishes you and is necessary to that job. Number 3 is competencies. So the knowledge needed to do it. That is knowing how to operate a cash register. That is a competency. Knowing how to ring something up, knowing how to use a certain computer system, knowing the codes for different products at a store, those are competencies. For example, when I worked at Starbucks, you have to know the lingo. That was one of the hardest parts about learning or becoming a Starbucks employee, is learning how to read the side of the cup and discern what it says. That's a competency that I had to know. Every job has some sort of specific competency that's necessary. My ability to use these different programs is a competency, and that's important. 4 is efficiency, the rate at which you worked. Not every job is done at the same rate, and sometimes you have to be deliberate in explaining the rate at which you worked. Sometimes you want to say you were working quickly under tight deadlines to show that you're able to get the job done in a tight time frame. Other times you want to explain that you had to be methodical. You couldn't rush. You had to take your time. And then, of course, the outcome, the result of your skills. What did it culminate in? Did it have a tangible end result? So those are 5 things that to consider. And as it says, not every job or skill description requires them, but you want to strive to include all of them if you're able to. And that's important. The ability to kind of list them allows you to put them together in specific ways to highlight different parts of your skills. So I'm going to show you an example. So a dishwasher might not be a glamorous job, but it's a very common job. It's an introductory job that a lot of people can get their foot in the door and start working at a restaurant pretty easily that way. So the abilities of a dishwasher. Okay, they need to be able to clean, to sort, to sanitize. Those are the tasks that are tangible, physical things. And that's very simple. They clean, they sort, they sanitize. The traits they have. Responsibility. You have to be responsible. You have to have a work ethic. You have to have stamina. Those are traits. Those are the things that define the way in which they work. Thorough. That's a trait. Competencies, knowledge of proper sanitizing process, familiarity with cookware. Those are, believe it or not, you have to know a lot to properly wash dishes, as silly as it sounds. Knowing what chemicals do what, knowing how the different machines operate. Those are all important things. So the more you know as far as those, as being a dishwasher goes, the faster and more efficient you can become. And then efficiency. Quickly, that might be an easy one. There's a lot of other ways you might be able to describe the rate at which you have to do it, but I will say if you're a dishwasher, you need to be fast. But you also need to be thorough. You need to be able to exhibit kind of the back and forth, the ability to make sure every dish is cleaned thoroughly and to the specifications of the restaurant, but also do it quickly. And the outcome is pretty easy. All dishes for customers and cookware for chefs are clean. Clean dishes, who'd have thought? So now what you're able to do with all 5 of those things is create a job description. That's kind of what it culminates in. By laying all of those different points of the skill out, you're able to build these different approaches that highlight different skills. So first job description, successfully cleaned, sorted, and sanitized a wide variety of cookware, dishes, and cutlery in a fast-paced environment. Highlights a lot of the different points we just brought up. Adding a word like successfully, some kind of adverb that highlights the skills. You don't just want to say, I cleaned dishes. That's flat. That's boring. It doesn't show that you took any pride in your job or that your job had importance. Successfully cleaned, sorted, and sanitized now starts to add a little bit more 3-dimension to it, shows that you had success. A wide variety of cookware shows a knowledge. Fast-paced environment shows the efficiency. The next one, responsible for ensuring that guests had clean plates and cutlery, chefs had clean cookware, and all dishes were properly sorted. So again, now we're kind of showing that the outcome, that we're focusing on the outcome with this one. Guests had clean plates and cutlery. That's the outcome of washing dishes. Chefs had clean cookware. Outcome. And all dishes were properly sorted. So a little bit of competency, because knowing what kind of dishes you're working with and where they go, okay, and you're showing a little bit of skill there with the organizational ability. So now you're seeing how that one can be outcome-oriented. And the last one, gained an extensive knowledge of the sanitization process, dishwashing equipment, and cleaning chemicals. That's all competency. Knowledge. Competencies are based on knowledge, so gained an extensive knowledge. So not just I know how to use cleaning chemicals, but I really know the ins and outs. I know which chemicals go with what. I know which ones not to mix. I know what the machines do, and that's an important thing. So you can see that even in those 3 different descriptors, we highlighted different elements. So now it's not just I clean dishes and organize dishes. It is now so much more. And this isn't to say that dishwashing has to be, that every job is going to be fluffed up to be made into some kind of super important thing, but really you got to know how to highlight the important abilities that you have. Don't sell yourself short. This is a chance for you to really highlight the skills you know you have and to put them in the spotlight so that way a potential boss can see those and know what you can do. So as a follow-up for this, I do have a worksheet that's kind of the same process we just did. So as it says, resume building skills. After viewing the resume building presentation, you'll use the sheet to work on the 5 points of skills and abilities, traits, competencies, efficiencies, and outcomes. Combined, those 5 points will help you take any skill and develop it into a thoughtful and complete description to put on a resume. So you need to take the 5 following tasks and 1, list at least 2 descriptors for each of the points of skill we discussed. So 2 abilities, 2 traits, 2 competencies, 2 efficiencies, and 2 outcomes. Afterward, you will create a sentence that combines at least 3 of the points into a descriptive statement. So if I take one of the abilities, one of the traits, and one of the outcomes, I can try to link that into a descriptive sentence. Please reference the dishwasher example from the presentation as an example. So yeah, look at what I did in the presentation to understand how I kind of picked and chose the different things that I wanted to highlight. So if you want to highlight the traits of a babysitter. So you're going to want to highlight maybe the responsible nature, but also the competencies, knowing how to perform CPR, knowing how to change diapers, knowing how to distribute medicines properly, efficiency, outcomes. The kids were properly taken care of. They went to bed at the proper time. They were, monitored thoroughly, and all of their needs were met. Something like that. And you'll create a descriptive sentence that combines all those. So the 5 different the jobs that I'm asking you to describe: babysitting, that's an easy one; dog walking, another pretty straightforward one; office or teacher's aide, that's one a lot of us have done. If you haven't done any of these things, it doesn't mean you can't describe them. It just means that you might have more insight if you have. So this isn't me assessing your knowledge of these jobs as much as it is your ability to think, what does an office or teacher's aide do? And what abilities, traits, competencies, and all that, what do they have? Cooking, another one that's pretty straightforward. A lot of us know how to cook in some degree. Maybe we haven't worked in a restaurant, but we know we have a general idea of what cooking entails with all those. And then the last one, house cleaning. If we have chores, we have an understanding of house cleaning. So that's based on a lot of these things, the abilities. So that one's a little bit broader than the others because house cleaning can be anything from cleaning your room to scrubbing bathtubs to raking leaves. There's a lot of things you could do around the house. So that one's wide open for you to pick and choose what you want to do with it. So it's very straightforward. This is, like I said, it's a language arts endeavor. It's a chance for you to think about these jobs and extrapolate on them. It's good to be able to write out what these jobs are all about before you create a description, so that way you can see all the pieces in front of you and decide which ones you want to use. So that being said, that's going to conclude this lesson. Thanks to everyone who came to the online discussion group on Tuesday. We're going to have another one on Thursday, and I'd love to see more people involved in that. It was a good time. That routine is really helpful for everybody. So I hope to see some of you then, more of you then, I should say. So good luck with the assignment. Please let me know if you have any questions. Send me a message on Remind, an email, some kind of communication, maybe through Teams, just to let me know if you have questions, concerns. It's been good hearing from all of you and knowing that you're doing as best as you can. So good luck with the assignment, and I will talk to you guys soon. All right, take care.